Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, as I brag about from time to time, as the only member of both this committee and the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, I see this from all vantage points and agree that nothing could be more important than for the future of our energy availability, reliability, and affordability than securing a permitting reform package that has been talked about not just this year, but for years and has eluded us a little bit. The package that came through ENR last session on a bipartisan basis, I think has become a good starting point for a lot of these conversations. I want to echo my colleague, Senator Whitehouse, the ranking member of this committee, and his desire to bring something meaningful forward. We've got to get past this administration's selective and unilateral cancellation of projects to restore the goodwill and good faith in those conversations. Now, to the witnesses before us, in July, the Interior Department issued a memo escalating 68 different project reviews to the secretary level. In effect, what were once upon a time routine agency actions now requiring the secretary's personal approval. And just some examples of what those 68 projects included, things like cable burial risk assessments, historic property management plans, supplemental environmental reports. These reviews are tying up critical generation and storage in what is now red tape and politics. Questions for Mr. Meyer. Do you believe we should be reducing the political involvement in agencies' energy project permitting reviews or increasing it?
I think it absolutely makes sense to streamline agency reviews. I'm not close enough to the specific issue that you're referencing to really comment on it, but I know that our industry has routinely advocated to make sure that we have a streamlined and clarified approach to make sure that we can develop the resources that we need to develop.
So from that industry perspective, do you think it's helpful for the Secretary of the Interior to have to sign off on what most people would consider routine reviews on energy projects?
Again, I understand the concern. I'm not close enough to that specific issue to really make an educated comment on it, but I do understand the concern.
So if a cabinet secretary has to approve every step along the permitting process for projects, does that slow down or expedite final approvals?
Again, I would defer to other witnesses on the panel in terms of understanding the actual impacts on those industries.
All right, let me ask a couple questions then of Ms. Hopper. The Department of the Interior's directives and stop work orders that I referenced earlier are effectively stalling over 100 gigawatts of energy projects that could be connected to the grid and help us meet our growing demand for energy. In your testimony, you say that applications are disappearing inside the Department of Interior and the developers can't even get a clear yes or no. What is a statutory protection that you think that you would recommend Congress consider to ensure no future administration can similarly stifle critical energy projects?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this to everyone's attention because it is having a huge and detrimental impact on the industry and on all of us and on rates. I think two things. One is that clarifying where the level of authority lies, right? As you're putting together a permitting package, as you said, many of the things in the Secretary Order of July 15th are sort of decisions that can be made at a much lower level. And so I think clarifying that in legislation would be helpful. I also think in terms of timelines, we've talked a lot about predictability and consistency. Part of what is happening and what you're describing is that things, permits go into the box, you submit them, and you never hear. You never hear what's happening, when it might happen, how it might happen, who's making the decision that it will happen. And that, again, can be clarified with some deadlines and timelines with some accountability, right? There has to be some kind of teeth on those, or else, the timelines don't really matter.
Well, at the risk of going off on a tangent, I know, particularly in the transportation sector, there was a lot of frustration nearly a year ago with the initial hiring freezes, encouraged layoffs, funding clawbacks, the Doge experiment. You had one point of contact to answer your questions or the status of an application one day, and they were completely gone. You had nobody to hear from the next. And I imagine that's having a similar impact here as part of that big box that you described. Now, separately, I know my time is short, Ms. Hopper, you released a statement regarding the House-passed SPEED Act, characterizing it as insufficient and saying that it falls short. Can you explain a little bit more to this committee what you meant by that and how what else we can do to improve that predictability that you rely on?
Absolutely. I think the thing that we thought was not adequately addressed in the SPEED Act is exactly what we're talking about, right? This sort of prospective discriminatory treatment, right? We've heard a lot about the weaponization of the permitting process, and that the SPEED Act does not solve that, right? It did have some bipartisan, with significant holes, element for permits that had already been issued, but nothing that really addressed this sort of overreach of an administration to punish a certain electricity source.
Okay, well, thank you. And at the end of the day, when all this leads to delays, delays is time, time is money, and it's always upon the ratepayers to bear that burden. Thank you, Madam Chair.